The coffee was still too hot to serve, but my mother shoved the carafe into my hands anyway, and pointed to the far wall. "Stand over there and try not to embarrass us," she said quietly, with the particular brand of cruelty that comes wrapped in a reasonable tone of voice. "Today is your brother's day. Just pour and be quiet." I walked to the credenza. I picked up the carafe. I checked the discreet watch on my wrist. 5 minutes. My compliance director would be walking through that door in 5 minutes. And not one person sitting around that boardroom table. Not my mother in her good blazer. Not my father adjusting his cufflinks. Not my brother practically vibrating in his chair. Had the faintest idea that the investment firm they were all so excited about belonged to me. My father has a philosophy about children that he has never stated directly, but has made clear in every decision he has ever made. Children are either a return on investment or a money pit. My brother has always been the return. I was always the pit. When my brother failed his first year at Schulich, my father hired a private tutor and told everyone at the club it was a sabbatical term. When he wrapped his first car around a guardrail on the 401, my father replaced it within the week and called it a lesson in consequences, though the only consequence my brother experienced was driving a newer model. When his Airbnb venture in Muskoka collapsed after one summer, because he didn't understand that passive income still requires showing up, my father quietly absorbed the $50,000 shortfall and called it a learning experience. My father called all of it investing. He had bet so heavily on my brother's eventual success that admitting the bet was bad had become psychologically impossible. To stop funding my brother would mean confronting 30 years of choices, and my father was not the kind of man who confronted anything. When I was accepted to the University of Toronto, he sat across from me at the kitchen table and said the money wasn't there. Not there isn't enough for both of you. Not we'll figure something out. Just, the money isn't there. He looked almost relieved to say it. I worked nights at the Shoppers Drug Mart on Bloor Street. I came home at 2 in the morning smelling like industrial cleaner, restocked shelves, then went straight to my 8 a.m. finance seminar. I graduated with honors and no debt and no help, and when I called home to tell my parents, my father asked whether I'd looked into a sales role somewhere. "Your brother is thinking about commission-based work," he said. "That's where the real money is." I did not get into commission-based work. I became a licensed insolvency trustee. It is not a glamorous designation. Most people at dinner parties don't know what it means, but what it means in practical terms is this. When companies stop being able to pay their debts, when creditors are circling, and assets are going toxic, I am the person who comes in. I assess, I restructure. Sometimes I save the company. Sometimes I liquidate it and distribute what's left. I have spent 11 years becoming very good at seeing exactly when something is about to collapse. And I have spent those same 11 years building a small, quiet firm on Bay Street that nobody in my family knows exists. My brother found out about Meridian Capital Group, the way he finds out about everything. Through a friend of a friend at a networking event, standing close to the bar. He came home that Christmas talking about them, the way he talked about every other opportunity, as if the universe had finally recognized what it had been missing. "They headhunted me," he said at the dinner table, and my mother touched his arm the way she always did, when he said something that made her proud. I knew about Meridian Capital Group, because I had flagged them 3 months earlier. They were a private placement fund based out of Vaughan, roughly 12 kilometers north of where we were sitting. On paper, they presented as an aggressive mid-market growth fund. In reality, they had been bleeding cash for 2 years. They were soliciting new limited partners with a buy-in of $200,000 CAD, desperately trying to pad their books before the regulatory pressure became terminal. I recognized the structure immediately. I had seen it a dozen times. What Meridian was doing wasn't technically illegal yet. But it was the kind of move you make when you're trying to delay the inevitable. And anyone who bought in at this stage was buying into a sinking ship with a fresh coat of paint on the hull. When I realized my brother was planning to hand them $200,000 he didn't have, using our parents' paid-off home in Etobicoke as collateral, my first instinct was to call him. I picked up my phone twice. I even typed the first sentence of the message once. Then I remembered Christmas dinner 2 years ago, when he told everyone at the table that I was in administration. His word for what I did delivered, with just enough of a smirk that everyone understood the implication. I remembered my mother nodding along. I remembered my father not correcting him. I put my phone down, then I called my lawyer. 12 days before that boardroom meeting, I acquired the controlling position in Meridian Capital Group's distressed debt. Through a holding company, my firm had structured specifically for situations like this. I did not own Meridian outright, but I controlled the board. I controlled the fund governance documents, and I controlled the man who was about to walk through that door in 4 minutes and 40 seconds. His name was Mr. Lafleur. He had been my compliance director for 6 years, and he was one of the sharpest forensic accountants I had ever worked with. Today, he was not playing the role of compliance director. He was playing the role of a very senior Meridian partner who needed to verify my brother's liquidity before they could proceed. He did not know I would be standing at the credenza. That part I had not told him. From my position by the wall, I had a clear view of everything. My father sat at the head of the table, though it wasn't his table to sit at the head of. He had that particular stiffness he gets when he's performing confidence. Shoulders back, chin lifted slightly, the way he'd sat when he signed the mortgage on the Etobicoke house 31 years ago, and told my mother it was the beginning of something. He was terrified, but he was performing certainty, because that was what he did. My brother had his laptop bag on the chair beside him and kept tapping his fingers against the clasp. He was wearing a new tie. He had clearly bought the tie specifically for today. My mother caught me looking and made a small motion with her hand. The water glasses, she mouthed. I picked up the carafe and moved to the table. This is the part I want to be clear about. I did not feel shame. I had expected to feel something when I was standing there, pouring water while my brother waited to sign a deal that would make him look important. I thought there might be some residual sting from 27 years of being the wrong child. But there was nothing. There was only the very specific calm that comes from knowing something that nobody else in the room knows. I filled my father's glass first. As I moved around the table, I heard my brother whisper to him, low and quick. The statement looks good. I cleaned it up. It's a PDF. They can't run it against the banking API unless I give them the login. My father's breath shortened. You're sure? It's fine, Dad. Stop worrying. I set down the carafe and went back to the credenza. They thought my stillness was servitude. It was not. It was the particular stillness of a person who has heard exactly what she needed to hear, and who is now simply waiting. The door opened. Mr. Lafleur walked in wearing a dark suit, and the expression he uses in rooms where he needs people to be slightly afraid of him, an expression he has perfected over many years. He walked past me without a glance, a piece of furniture, exactly as I'd instructed, and extended his hand to my brother. I appreciate you coming in, Mr. Lafleur said. He had the kind of voice that makes rooms quieter when he uses it. I understand you've had the liquidity documentation prepared. My brother stood up too fast and caught the edge of the table. Absolutely. Everything's in order. This is my father. He's co-signing the collateral arrangement. My father rose and shook Mr. Lafleur's hand with both of his, which is what he does when he wants to signal that he considers someone important. We're very committed to this, my father said. My son has been looking at this opportunity for months. We've done our due diligence. Mr. Lafleur sat down and opened his portfolio. Commitment is a good start, solvency is better. He glanced at the documents in front of him. I'll need to verify the $200,000 in liquid assets before we can move to the collateral stage. We have a tight window. Another buyer is looking at the same limited partnership seat. My mother snapped her fingers. The sound was sharp enough that everyone looked at her, and she pointed at Mr. Lafleur's empty coaster and then at me. Coffee, she said as if flagging a waiter, and try not to hover. I poured the coffee. I set it down carefully without a word. My brother slid an envelope across the table. TD bank statement, $214,000 in liquid cash, certified copy, notarized this morning. Mr. Lafleur did not touch the envelope. He looked at me. That was the signal. I cleared my throat. Mr. Lafleur, I'm sorry, I should have flagged this earlier. The document scanner isn't connecting to our verification system this morning. IT is working on it. My brother frowned. It's a paper copy. Just take the paper. Our compliance protocol requires digital originals for any buy-in above $100,000, I said, apologetic and helpful, a person genuinely sorry for the inconvenience. We can't accept hard copies for the initial verification. It creates liability under OSB guidelines. I turned to my brother with a small, useful smile. If you could just forward the original PDF directly from your banking app to our secure portal, we can display it on the screen for immediate review, and have you confirmed within minutes. I pointed to the large monitor mounted on the wall. My brother's expression shifted. Very subtle. Just the faintest flicker, there and gone. He knew exactly what he'd done to that PDF, and he knew that logging into his actual TD account would show $200,000 less than the statement he'd printed. But the alternative was admitting that in front of our father, in front of a senior Meridian partner, in front of the woman he had told everyone was in administration. Mr. Lafleur checked his watch. We do have the other buyer waiting. If we can't confirm funds in the next 10 minutes, I'll have to move to the next candidate. Panic doesn't announce itself. It just makes people stop thinking. My brother pulled out his laptop. He typed quickly, not looking up. I watched him open his email. I watched him navigate to his downloads folder. I watched him attach the file. The file name read something like TD statement oct.mended.df. He hit send. My phone buzzed in my pocket once quietly and then was still. I looked at him. He was closing the laptop, settling back into his chair, shoulders relaxing the way they do when you think you've just gotten away with something. He didn't know that transmitting a falsified financial document by electronic means in order to induce a financial agreement is fraud under Section 380 of the Criminal Code of Canada. He didn't know that, as a licensed insolvency trustee, I have a mandatory reporting obligation to the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy. He didn't know that the phone in my pocket now contained the time-stamped evidence, received by me personally, sent across a provincial network. He thought he had just won. Mr. Lafleur reviewed his tablet, acknowledging the receipt. He closed the portfolio without comment. The digital transfer will need a 24-hour clearing period to settle. Standard practice for placements at this level. To lock in the seat before market open tomorrow, we'll need same-day collateral. He reached into his briefcase and removed a document bound in blue legal backing, the kind that Ontario real estate lawyers use when they want something to feel serious and final, and slid it across the table to my father. A collateral mortgage, Mr. Lafleur said, his voice the same temperature as the February air outside. It places a security interest against your primary residence at the Etobicoke property. Once the wire transfer clears in 24 hours, the security interest is discharged. Standard procedure for high-velocity closings. The room went very quiet. I watched my father's hand go to the document and then stop. He had paid off that house 11 years ago. It was the one thing he had done financially that was actually finished. Actually his, actually safe. It was his retirement. It was what he planned to leave behind. He looked at the document, and then he looked at my brother, and then he looked at me. I made sure I looked small. I made sure I looked like a person who didn't understand what was happening. A person who was there to pour coffee and stay out of the way. Is this strictly necessary? My father asked. You have the bank statement. The partnership structure requires hard assets as a bridge, Mr. Lafleur said, already checking his watch. If you're not comfortable, I can contact the other party. My brother leaned in. Dad, it's 24 hours. The money is right there. We're not losing this because you got cold feet. My father hesitated. My brother lowered his voice. Once I'm a limited partner, the carry fees alone, we're talking about a completely different life. The cottage in Muskoka you've always wanted, the one on the lake. Something went out of my father's eyes. The fear, yes, but something else too. Some small, stubbornly surviving piece of doubt that had apparently been holding on for a very long time. He had spent 30 years choosing, my brother. He had called me cautious as if it were a character flaw, and not the reason our family had a house at all. Walking away now meant that every single one of those choices had been wrong. His ego would not survive the implications of being that mistaken. Some men are simply unable to live in a world where the investment thesis of their entire life turns out to have been a mistake, and my father was one of them. He picked up the pen. My brother watched him sign with a satisfaction that was almost physical to observe. When my father set the pen down, my brother looked across the table at me, with the expression I knew better than almost anything else in my life. The one that said, this is how it works, and you have never understood it. When I get the home office set up at the new place, he said pleasantly, I'll probably need someone to help coordinate the move. You're good at quiet tasks. My mother smiled, an agreeable, comfortable sound. I set down the coffee carafe. I picked up my phone. I walked to the head of the table. Actually, I said, I need to take a moment. My father looked at me. Mr. Lafleur went still in the precise way I had briefed him to go still. I connected my phone to the monitor on the wall. What are you doing? My father said, voice tightening. Sit down. Document A, I said, and tapped the screen. A corporate registration appeared, filed with the Ontario Business Registry 14 months ago. Aldenmore Advisory Holdings, Director, my full legal name. My father read it aloud, slowly, the way people read when they're not sure they're seeing what they think they're seeing. I own the fund, I said. Mr. Lafleur works for me. He has for 6 years. Silence. Document B. The real-time account balance from my brother's banking profile, obtained legally. Through the digital authorization he had not read carefully when he connected his banking details to dispatch the email. The number on the screen was $842. My brother had gone the color of old paper. Document C. The PDF he had sent me, displayed with its metadata panel open, file created 11:04 a.m. that morning, modified 11:47 a.m., edited in Adobe Acrobat, original source, TD Bank, fields altered, account balance, transaction history, font inconsistencies flagged across 3 data fields. That document constitutes fraud under Section 380 of the Criminal Code of Canada, I said. You transmitted a falsified financial instrument across a provincial network to induce a financial agreement. Minimum sentence in Canada for fraud over $5,000 is 2 years. Over 1 million, the ceiling is 14. My father's pen was on the table. He had not picked it up again. My brother said, his voice barely functional. It was a placeholder. You were going to use Dad's house to borrow $200,000 from your own sister's fund, I said. By submitting a forged bank statement to the person who owns the fund. That is what you were going to do. I placed 2 documents on the table, printed, clean, labeled clearly. Option A. I contact the RCMP Financial Crimes Unit and the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy this afternoon, both of which I am required to do as a licensed insolvency trustee upon receiving evidence of fraud. The Etobicoke property becomes entangled in asset proceedings within 48 hours and you lose it anyway, along with your brother's freedom. No one moved. Option B. You sign a transfer of title. The Etobicoke house transfers to Aldenmore Advisory Holdings. I cover property tax and all maintenance. You both remain living there at no cost for as long as you choose to. My brother walks away without a criminal record. This offer is open for the next 10 minutes. You can't do this. My mother's voice had gone very high and very thin. That is our home. We have lived there for. You signed it as collateral 20 minutes ago, I said. I'm simply deciding who takes it. My father looked at my brother for a long time. He looked at him the way people look at something they have put a great deal of faith into and are finally, irrevocably seeing clearly. Not with anger, exactly, but with a kind of vast and flattening exhaustion. The exhaustion of a man who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has just understood that it was never, at any point, going to get lighter. Then he looked at me. Give me the pen, he said quietly. He signed. I picked up the transfer document and slid it into my portfolio. I turned to Mr. Lafleur. Would you mind waiting downstairs? If I'm not out in 5 minutes, forward the fraud file to the RCMP division we briefed on Monday. He nodded and left without looking at anyone. I stood at the head of the table and looked at my family. You can stay in the house, I said to my father. Both of you, that doesn't change. I'll cover the taxes and the upkeep. Something moved across his face. I didn't try to name it. But he leaves today. I looked at my brother. His name comes off every financial document associated with that property by end of week. If he needs somewhere to go, that is a conversation for the two of you to have. My condo's in arrears, my brother said. And there was something in his voice that I recognized, as the sound of a person still looking for a door in a room that doesn't have one. I've been carrying 3 credit cards since April. I don't have anywhere. I know, I said. He looked at me. I've known your accounts were in arrears since July. I'm a licensed insolvency trustee. It's what I do for a living. I watched every decision you made for the past 2 years and I said nothing. I stopped. I had rehearsed some version of this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, I found I didn't need most of what I'd planned. You told our parents I was in administration. At Christmas dinner in front of everyone, you made it a punchline. So no, I don't have a suggestion for where you go next. That is a problem you will have to solve with the skills you have always insisted you had. I picked up my portfolio. I looked at my mother, who had not said anything for some time and was very still in her chair. The coffee's still hot, I said. You're welcome. I walked out. The elevator down to King Street took 47 seconds. I counted because I needed something to count. Outside, the February air hit immediately, that specific Toronto cold that is not dramatic but simply relentless, the kind that doesn't care whether you are having the worst day of your life or the best one. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, portfolio under my arm, breath visible in the air in front of me. Mr. Lafleur fell into step beside me. We walked half a block before either of us spoke. Clean? He asked. Clean, I said. He nodded once. Coffee looked good, by the way. I almost smiled. I've had a lot of practice. 2 weeks later, my father called. I was at Pearson Airport, waiting to board a flight to Vancouver for a restructuring conference. I watched his name on the screen until it stopped ringing, then put the phone in my bag and picked up my boarding pass. I had a window seat. The lake was frozen solid as we climbed, the city spreading out beneath the wing, all that grid and gray, and the particular dull silver of a Canadian winter that always looks worse from above than it feels on the ground. I thought about the house in Etobicoke, the wallpaper in the upstairs hallway that had been peeling since I was 9. The way the third step from the top of the staircase had always creaked. The kitchen window that faced west and caught the last of the afternoon light in the summer, the light that I had loved as a child without ever saying so. Because in our house you did not say things like I love this about small ordinary things. You said them about returns on investment. You said them about potential. You said them about the boy at the dinner table, who had not yet done anything but who was going to, one day, any day now. I had put more into that house in the past 2 weeks than I had ever been given from it. That was fine. I was good at building things from the wrong direction. It was, if anything, the skill I had spent my entire life practicing. The plane leveled out. I opened my laptop. I had 3 restructuring files waiting, and a Monday morning meeting with a client in Gastown, who needed a plan before her creditors started moving. I got to work.